news on the jobs front. More jobs created for 2 successive quarters this year. And the official unemployment rate has decreased a fraction to 32.6%. Stats SA's latest quarterly labour force survey shows that the number of employed people increased by 154,000 to 16.3 million compared to the preceding period. In the first 2 quarters of this year, formal sector employment, that accounts for nearly 70% of jobs, increased by 143,000 posts. Meanwhile, the number of unemployed persons decreased by 11,000 to 7.9 million. And even the number of discouraged work seekers decreased by 94,000. However, youth unemployment remains stubbornly high, and South Africa still has the world's highest unemployment rate. Employment levels have almost reached pre-COVID levels.
Though any lower rate is welcome, the numbers of unemployed people in our country remain staggering, especially when factoring in millions of discouraged work seekers. Now, the main contributors to the improved unemployment rate are utilities, mining and manufacturing. Another area of concern is the plight of private households, where employment remains on a consistent downward trajectory. Improvement is a good thing, but we need to see much more of this before celebrations can be considered.
Studies have proven that prioritising the advancement of women in the workplace is good for a company's bottom line. In fact, research by IBM shows that revenues can increase by as much as 61%. But this is a major problem in Sub-Saharan Africa, since women are less likely to find work compared to men. And while the latest employment figures are positive, many South Africans, especially women, remain without jobs. So how can this be addressed? Youth Employment Service CEO Ravi Naidoo speaks to us now. Ravi, thank you so much for your time this evening. So unemployment inequalities continue to exist, partially because of historic unemployment prejudices that have not been adequately addressed, partially because of the large amount of unpaid home and care work that women undertake and which keeps them away from formal employment. And of course, partially because many workspaces are spatially untransformed. So clearly we need to do something about it. But let's start with the context and what the picture looks like currently. How many women are employed compared to their male counterparts?
Well, good evening. Yes, so at the moment there are 2 million fewer women in employment than men. So there's 16.4 million people employed in South Africa, of which 9 million are men and 7 million are women. So yeah, so women would be less likely to be employed than men, and also the types of sectors where women would be employed would also be, in certain sectors, excluding, manufacturing and mining and construction, and they'd be more concentrated into personal services, community related jobs, social sector jobs. So there's definitely a labor market discrimination and preponderance that is there in terms of employment of women.
What does that picture look like when we look at the amount of women employed in management positions, and then again when we look at the amount of young women in employment?
Yes. So if you look at management, yes, so there's about 400,000 women in management jobs and about 800,000 men. So yeah, so 2 out of 3 managers will be men, and 1/3 being women. I think that is changing a little bit in terms of the younger women coming into the labor market, and that's mainly because you find a lot of women going into post-school education and training. So in fact, women are as likely as men to be going in post-school education and training, and in some cases more. So I think you're finding a lot of women with more education and career ambitions and so on coming in. So I think there's a potential to harness that with the right policies and support to really give women a chance to progress more than in the past in terms of the labor market, and also, of course, in terms of particular sectors. So I think we're finding, if you look at the financial sector, actually women are almost even in terms of the number of people in jobs as men. Obviously, you'll find it, I think, again, it will probably be less so in terms of management, but nonetheless, that has improved compared to in the past.
So we know that our youth unemployment figures in South Africa are staggering, and the large preponderance of those unemployed youth are unfortunately female, or there are significantly more females youth unemployed than their male counterparts. But I want us to take a look at some of the benefits identified, and this is across the globe through various studies, the benefits of employing women. Can you highlight some of those for us?
Well, I mean, it's certainly in terms of, if you look at it from a national point of view, you really want to get your whole team playing in the game. So certainly from a national point of view, you want to get as many women and young people as possible to be actively involved in the economy and to be contributing to growth. Certainly, we know women are as capable and as men certainly in all the field services sectors, management. So there's a huge amount of potential, certainly economically, that we can gain by ensuring that we are putting in place policies and programs to get women employed. And that means dealing with things like discrimination in the workplace and ensuring that really the most talented person comes through to get the job, in which case you're as likely to have it as that post being taken by a woman than as a man. So I think that's the first thing. And yeah, so certainly we are finding that there are a number of programs now, like the Youth Employment Service, where about 57% of all the people in our program are women. And if you look at nationally, there's also the Employment Equity Amendment Act, which is being taken forward, and that obviously is looking at how to deal with underrepresentation of women in the workplace. So trying to get parity there in terms of men, and I think certainly those companies where they have done that are finding that they're obviously having good results. I wouldn't say women are necessarily going to be more effective or productive than men, but certainly if as a company you're not giving everyone the same chance, then obviously are more likely to have less talent in your workforce than you would otherwise have. So it just makes better business sense to have a level playing field in terms of gender parity, at least.
Just to highlight, one of the underlying benefits, and I think we haven't quite explored, is that a study found that the more women that are in employment, the more household income is dedicated to access to healthcare, education, improved social mobility for children, I suppose there are various reasons for that, and the amount of women raising children on their own could possibly be one of those reasons. So there certainly are a lot of socio-economic benefits to making sure that more women are in employment in South Africa. But I want you to highlight for us, apart from the programs that you've already mentioned and the government initiatives, how local businesses, small, medium, large, can build that pipeline to get more women into employment.
So the first thing I think is just skills and training development. You want to put in place programs which can give people skills and training. So I think that's in terms of the national programs, it's very important. From the Youth Employment Service point of view, we are a special incentive program that was created by the private sector a number of years ago, to where if companies give young women a chance to work in their companies and they sponsor women, and there's a formula for that, companies can go up in their BE levels. So if there's a certain number of women that you can support and it meets the target and it's verified as such, then the sponsoring a company can go up in its B levels from, let's go up to 2 levels. So let's say from a level 4 to a level 2 and so on. So I think that's how the government and the private sector are collaborating, at least to create a pipeline of talent for youth. And we're also linking that to particular sectors. So women going into coding, women going into drone pilot programs. So a whole range of sectors where we think there's a good future for the country and a good future in terms of the people who then take those jobs. So I think at a sector level and at the skills program level, and of course at the national level in terms of labor legislation, they are trying to put in place programs that can promote the cause of women in jobs. And of course, as you say, it's also important for at the community level and so on to get women to also, push for further changes that can make it easier for them to be integrated in the workplace. And I think certainly, in Women's Month, a number of these programs have been demonstrated, and there's a lot of publicity on it. But it's something you have to focus on all year round. And certainly, I think South Africa has made some improvements in that. The challenge we have is that the labor market as a whole really hasn't been good in terms of creating jobs. And the challenge is the more you have built-in discrimination there, then the first people who suffer when the labor market is not growing will be young people and women, and basically less vulnerable groups would get pushed out first. So we also need to ensure that the economy is growing, and then it's easy for these programs to also gain traction.
Absolutely, an all-round effort is required, but good to focus on it during Women's Month to continue driving that awareness. Thank you so much for your time. That was Youth Employment Service CEO Ravi Naidoo.